Hi, friends. Welcome to this season's first episode of India Decoding Jobs, Talent Council. This is the Lighthouse series, and it gives me great pleasure in welcoming you. We have with us Mr. Tarun N P Varma. Mr. Tarun N P Varma is the Chief People and Sustainability Officer of a fantastic brand. And before I go any further, I would want you to look at your pantries. I would want to look at your grocery list. So if you see Tata Sampann spices, if you see Tata Tetli tea, if you see bottles of water like the ones we have right here, and so many other coffee brands. Of course, I have Starbucks right here, which are my mints, though. You will know what I'm talking about. Uh, and if I go down memory lane, I think an advertisement in the 70s, Namak hai Tata ka Tata Namak, and that is precisely the brand we're talking about. It is Tata Consumer Products that uh, aggregates all of these amazing brands that are in our daily lives. So, welcome, Tarun. You do a fantastic job in the talent mandate, in bringing in the great talent that runs this fantastic organization, and in sustaining it, and in being able to bring out the best in this organization, which is growing very rapidly, organically and inorganically. And it gives me great pleasure in having you. Just so that you all know, Tarun has spent many years in very large FMCG brands in the telecom space and tech organizations, but today is leading Tata Consumer Products, the people agenda, and a lot that happens in this global organization. Because, of course, we know it being Indian for India in the hinterlands too, but we know that it's a fantastic global organization. So, welcome once again, Tarun. Right? I'll want to
Thank you, Devashish, and appreciate that. But we probably should be hiring you for our next marketing assignment.
Tarun, there's a reason why this first episode of this season is a company like Tata Consumer Products. It comes in the wake of a great loss for our nation. Sri Ratan Tata, uh, God bless his beautiful soul, is no more physically with us, but his guiding principles and his value system carries on, not only guiding the entire Tata Group as an organization, but this nation in the way business needs to be done with great compassion, with great integrity, with excellence, with a spirit of never say die, with a spirit of great understanding on ground zero of what is happening. So, very quickly, Tarun, you lead the people agenda for a brand which is growing so rapidly. It's penetrating every part of the Indian household. It is penetrating the Indian story abroad so beautifully. Not only that, also a lot of the local stories abroad. How does Mr. Ratan Tata's legacy inspire Tata Consumer Products?
So, firstly, thank you, Devashish, and really appreciate. I think everybody I have met without fail has said that Mr. Tata's loss feels personal, and I think that is the kind of mark of a man. I would quote two of those values and three examples. The first one is, of course, that of integrity. I think everybody who has come across either Mr. Tata or someone from the Tata Group
Yeah.
has always said integrity, Tata means trust. And it just cuts across every single thing which we do. The second value I will pick, and there are many, but I'll probably pick about one is pioneering. And let me pick a personal example. I have not just a history of having worked here at Tata Consumer, but having studied in Jamshedpur, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty much home
Yeah.
to what the Tata Group has pioneered. Not just in terms of the fact that, if you remember, we also make
Yeah.
steel.
Yeah.
My father still quotes it as an example. but the fact that we made real social impact, right? The other example is in 1999, morning of January, we were told that someone is coming onto our campus, and my campus, it was here in Mumbai, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences,
Yeah.
and it was Mr. Tata, Mr. Deshmukh, a number of other senior leaders who were there for inauguration and the groundbreaking of the new campus of TISS. So those of you who have studied in the new campus, trust me, I'm from the last millennium, batch of 99, and I witnessed when Mr. Tata was there to actually um, inaugurate and kind of open the new campus. And to me, TISS is another example of what the group has done in terms of pioneering. Third example is closer home here. Mr. Tata has taken this company, and actually India global. I think everyone says that. None better than the fact that you named Tetley as an example. The fact that an Indian company could actually acquire and integrate a company double its size, a global company. What better an example of a pioneering spirit than one can talk about that. Yeah, almost 2 decades later, we are beneficiaries of that pioneering spirit. Even now, as you said, we are a global organization. We have, of course, a lot of strong, locally entrenched brands, but we still draw inspiration from the fact that the other day, my colleague who manages the international business said that the one of the cricket clubs in the UK, I think it was the Surrey County Club, has begun serving Tata tea, not Tetley, Tata tea in the club. So, fantastic. Two examples of the two values and three ways in which I've seen it personally.
I recall many years ago this interview of Mr. Ratan Tata by a teary-eyed British journalist when we did the acquisition of Tetley. And he says that this brand, which has been on our breakfast tables every morning and is so British, now going to an Indian company. What is your take on that? And now someone could have answered it any way, but the empathy with which Mr. Ratan Tata answered that question, and he was, very nationalistic about too. He says, of course, we are very, very gentle about it, and we understand that it is matters so much to people in Britain, but you need to understand that, of course, the tea is Indian. And he says that what would have hit harder is my acquisition of Jaguar and Land Rover. But of course, it's an Indian tea. It's been loved by the British people, but we will make sure that we don't dilute in the way uh, the British consume tea here, and the Tetley brand, which is the Tata Tetley brand. So fantastic, and thank you so much, Tarun. With this, we move to our first segment, decoding the jobs, and. My first question to you here in this segment, Tarun, is Tata Consumer Products has grown immensely inorganically. Number one, it has grown immensely by penetrating, and this is a national Indian question, by penetrating the tier two, tier three towns, the hinterlands. How do you see the future, the near future for Tata Consumer Products with this kind of growth?
So, firstly, the one thing we say, Tata Consumer Products, as the name itself suggests, we are tasked with the responsibility of creating a global premier FMCG company from the house of Tatas, right? The four parts to our name, if I kind of break them up, right? There is the Tata name up front, so the family name is very clear. So upholding that reputation is something we all live up to, right? The second part is we're not Tata Customer Products, we're Tata Consumer Products.
Yes.
And what that does is it makes a very clear messaging that we're here for the best possible kinds of products that people lay their trust in because it comes from the house of Tatas.
For better.
And I was going to come to that, which is these are products that consumers choose because they believe these are for better. They believe that my mother or my teenage son, what better a quality management system than them consuming it? And I'm saying, look, I trust my products. They are having it. My own family has it, right? So consuming is super important. The third bit is this is about products. This is about physical products which have to be taken to people's households, to retailers. They have to be moved. We do have e-commerce, of course, as a vehicle, but ultimately it's a means to an end, and therefore the product has to reach someone. And the last bit is that it's also a public limited company. So the standards of corporate governance expected from us, in all of these, I can fit the term for better. And that's why we say for better is what we stand for. Let me kind of break that down to 4 parts. The first part is we say we stand for a better planet. Because all that we do should ensure that the carbon footprint, the water footprint. I mean, you're seeing water out here, there's packaging out here. As an FMCG company, packaging is my lifeblood, right? But that puts plastic out there. So again, I go back, as a Tata company, as a consumer products company, as a public limited company, what is expected from me? Can I do more than that? And hence the term for better. For better also, Devashish, is a statement that we're not the best. We're not even close. But each one of my employees, each one of my staff, each one of my partners is working for the consumer for better planet, for better products and nutrition. Another piece that people always ask us is about the sourcing of our products, right? Do I trust the source? Today, accountability with regard to social norms, child labor, for example. Is your value chain truly traceable?
Wow.
Right? So traceability is an important topic for us, not because compliance asks for it, but because we want to do for better. So sourcing transparency. And the fourth pillar, which is besides planet, nutrition, sourcing, is communities. Again, it's a Tata company, right? I mean, anything we do, ultimately the founders themselves said it, that we exist because of society. And therefore the biggest stakeholder we work for, and everything we do ultimately does go back to society. So that's what we stand for better.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I can vouch for it in my own household. My better half, she makes sure that our lentils are Tata Sampann lentils. Um, or for that matter, our turmeric that we use in our daily cooking, and especially in Indian households. It might be a lighter yellow, might not look very glowy, but she knows it's pure, the purity that and the quality that and the unpolished dals, etc., that we use. So I think we stood by, and I recall the time when in the 70s as a kid, and my father was a doctor, and there was a WHO red flag to India for goiter due to lack of iodine. And Tata immediately made sure that the advertising too says, if you remember, iodine yukt Tata Namak, and how that changed the graph of that disease in India. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Tarun. I think I would now want to come to our core aspect, and we do this series, India Decoding Jobs. It's actually a report that comes out every year, one of the most important reports that brings together the trinity of academia, industry leaders like you, as well as the government. And we try and decode one of the most important topics in our nation, which is jobs and employment. And to that, Tata Consumer Products, it hires across a diaspora of talent for your various industry segments, for your various brands. How do you see, Tarun? What are the jobs that you see are coming in? What are the jobs that are going out? What is the latest trend within Tata Consumer Products?
So yeah, this is absolutely a topic of deep interest. In fact, very often I tell my colleagues that sometimes I believe TCP stands for talent, culture, and performance, because that is the mixture that kind of makes us the company we are, and the company that we will aspire to be, right? So let me come back again to what is it that we are we're looking forward to. And I'm just being mindful here because we're also a listed company, so I will not make any forward-looking statements.
Of course.
There are two parts to our organization. I can tell you with absolute certainty that Tata Consumer Products is working on two axes, x-axis, y-axis. We're working on growth and working on transformation, right? Now, what that effectively means is that, as you said, we've got organic growth, but we also have inorganic growth. And the reason is quite simple. We've essentially been for many years, and we have a rich history of being in an earlier avatar, Tata Tea. Now, the tea industry has certain, skills, certain jobs. Even now, we run plantations, right? So we do have plantation workers. We have people who work in our factories. And from there, we've now upskilled all the way through to better packaging, getting into value-added products. The typical cycle is you go from loose tea to packaged tea to premium tea to today, for example, Organic India is being offered. Now, if you see what I'm saying out here is it's a combination of organic evolution and an inorganic acquisition of an Organic India organization, but which brings us at the cusp of traditional Indian wellness of Ayurveda. You've got Tulsi green tea, which is our kind of awesome product that you must try. Along with the fact
Tulsi Mulai tea.
Exactly.
That's my regular first thing in the morning. I have replaced my morning tea with that. It's supposed to be a healthier option.
So just on that one space, Devashish, imagine the kind of skills I have to now upskill myself on. So all the way from knowing how do you run tea plantations, all the way up to knowing how do you grow herbs. In fact, last week I was in Lucknow in one of our farms where they were growing Brahmi, and I was trying to understand what is Brahmi. And then we have an Ayurvedic doctor there who's trying out new recipes and said, how do you now take Brahmi in a format of a ghee, right? Because of that, we now are going to go into nutraceuticals. So we're offering, an ashwagandha or moringa, right? All of these, again, from the house of Tatas, and therefore no questions in terms of shortcuts in the whole process. And people would trust us.
Right.
And we are present at every need state. There's just one single category, Devashish, which is beverages, right? Now, the movement has spread across the fact that we have become now, or are becoming now, a multi-category FMCG company. Even within that, our presence primarily is still only in food and beverages. So imagine the amount of opportunity still left out there.
Sure.
And then double click on that in terms of what are the skills required. So take, for example, you mentioned about your spouse who's converted to Tata Sampan. Thank you so much for that. The fact that I have to make sure that she's consuming a product that she trusts is a culmination of the right people in procurement procuring correctly, the people in quality who have tested for that. They also take consumer complaints very seriously, right? The folks in our brands and category team making all the right claims, not false claims of this is good for you or your I suddenly grow hair or some claim like that. The fact that it then, like I said, it's a physical product. It has to reach where Devashish and his family go shopping. Therefore, a distribution organization, supply chain, planning, because you've got to procure the product basis a plan. So planning becomes a highly complex skill to have. Now, as I'm unfolding this topic, you realize that at every part of the value chain, you're adding value. There is a skills ecosystem that is required. And along with that, therefore, comes the topic of jobs. So to me, I think you read jobs, you have to read skills. You have to read value chain. Because there are too many companies out there who, in all honesty, I find are setting up organizations, talking about jobs, and then those jobs have disappeared. Right? And therefore, the society at large has seen net employment destruction than employment addition. Now, I don't mean that we've got to all add up, and it could be direct employment, indirect employment, Today we've got 3,200 distributors, each of whom deploys a network of people. They deploy people out there. We work, we have our own manufacturing plants. We have outsourced manufacturing also. So the fact that there is a huge multiplier effect of what we do, that to me is the impact. But the core element out here is jobs is equal to skills, Devashish.
Couldn't agree more. And that comes, and you touched upon upskilling, which is so core to, especially an organization which is growing so rapidly with so many new evolving roles. That whole skill ecosystems is revamping itself. Um, and in a nation which is getting digitized so rapidly, and with Tata Consumer Products making such inroads horizontally, especially across all your various brands, the entire supply chain, upstream, downstream. How is digitization impacting in the way you are reskilling, upskilling? Tarun?
So if I again, kind of go back to the point about our entire talent landscape, honestly, digitization has, in terms of landscape, changed nothing. All you've done is taken the landscape and put roller skates below it. Why am I saying that? And I don't mean to be facetious about this, but my consumer does not pay me because I digitize,
Digitize, sure.
right? My consumer doesn't pay me because I've got some new fancy system in place. My consumer pays me because every day, millions of times, 250 million households like yours get access when they want to have certain product. And if I can fulfill that better, that to me is the core purpose of digitalization. So, number one is, are we able to take better decisions? As I mentioned, planning, right? The fact that today we have got an integrated business plan which looks from demand estimation all the way through to demand being fulfilled, the planning itself getting completely digitalized. Take another example. We all, and I'm sure you all have, tried tea. We've taken tea tasting to a level where we've actually infused knowledge management and digitalization into tea tasting.
Wow.
Because our tea tasters, they make choices about, and there's a specific language that they use, but that results in a particular price and a declaration of the quality of the product. That is captured thousands of times every single day. It is put onto a digital system, which gives us a body, or as you call it, a data lake, that we then tap into to take better informed decisions. Now, if we can do that in all other functions in this similar fashion, to me, we have that ability, because as an FMCG company, I don't wait for one aeroplane to be sold. We sell 2,000, 3,000 different products in every single city and state every single day. So you've got millions of transactions playing out. That's one layer. Secondly, you've got the data which is coming from that. We're ensuring that we have put in plugs and sensors to get the data into a particular place. And number three, we are equipping our decision makers to use that data to take better evidence-based decisions. It's tough because people come with experience, so they want to rely on gut and experience, but how do you marry the two? So it's a combination of hardcore systems, transactions, putting it into a system and a lake, and then pulling it out from a data point of view. But it's also about the mindset change of people who've got tremendous experience, seeing this as being an augmentation and not a replacement of their experience.
Fantastic. So digitization is perhaps a new backbone, but it is experience that your consumer experience is what is getting impacted.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, amazing. Because I grew up in right next door to Tata Tea Estate. I mean, it was a Tata Tea Estate called Terana Tea Estates in Siliguri, and I remember the shop floor there. I, I'm just trying to visualize all the digitization that could have happened right there. Fantastic. I'll come to my next part. Thank you so much, Tarun. That was very, very insightful. Um, the FMCG industry. in terms of diversity is hovering between 12 to 15% of gender diversity
Yeah.
only today in India. And tagged is your talent partner. And we have diversity mandates, which we have signed up for. Uh, in today's growing India, and with the focus that Tata Consumer Products has on diversity, what are the goals that you personally are chasing as leading the talent agenda in TCP?
So, firstly, Devashish, thank you for making a more inclusive definition of
Yes,
diversity itself.
yes.
Because the other day I was just correcting a few of my colleagues that we use the word "I have hired diversity," quote unquote.
Oh.
And I was like, "You mean that you've hired women into your team?" Um, I think the first part again comes back to the part that are we hiring diverse mindsets? Because the moment you are hiring people with a similar mindset, let me give you an example, right? You've got sales as an FMCG company today. Sales is not just about going to every single kirana store and shopping. And today, the salesperson has got a digital handset with the latest tech that has come through. You can infuse AI into it, gives you a recommendation engine. Now, I can give the person all the skills you require, but if that person doesn't have the mindset to use that to service the customer better, the person will simply operate same old, same old. So, do I need to have a diversity in my frontline mindset? Absolutely. Therefore, do I see attrition in frontline as a problem? Yes. But I also see it as an opportunity to infuse the diversity and diverse mindset in there. Now, if I flip across to the more traditional answer, which is gender, our answer has been absolutely unanimous, which is that as an FMCG company, my gender diversity should reflect that of my consumer base.
Sure.
And you know what the math
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Not
absolutely.
it's not
70
calculus. Yeah? The beauty is where it matters. So which means that again, the team who delivers Tata Sampann, the marketing team, we are 50-50, in fact more than 50% women in that marketing team. The team that does the R&D for all of that, we're more than 50% there as well in terms of women there. So if I go function by function, we have absolutely fair representation when it comes to gender. There are, however, certain functions, and I'll now go completely skewed, right? Which is, on the one hand, sales and some of our manufacturing sites, diversity ratio with regard to gender is as low as 10%. But if I go to my plantations, we still run close to 1.5 lakh acres of tea and coffee estates in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, in Karnataka, in West Bengal, in Assam. Suddenly the ratio shoots up to 60% plus.
Yeah.
Right? And that is where you kind of see that there are reasons for that. Right? There are structural reasons in some parts, there are cultural reasons in some parts, and therefore I can't give one single answer to that. And therefore I've decided not to give a target on diversity across the organization. Rather, what I've asked is a commitment to saying if you in your respective part of the organization can deliver some form of diversity, whatever it may be, it could be industry, skills, backgrounds. We have a fair range of on-roll, off-roll people coming together. Simple things like, do I discriminate between training of people who are on-roll different from off-roll? Why? Right? So don't let legal barriers come in some of these measures. So that is the kind of, I would say, pluralistic definition, more inclusive definition of diversity that we've tried to fulfill out here.
Amazing, amazing, Tarun. And I think my very profound takeaway um, is what you just said about diverse mindset. And if I may just add on heart set, I think that is, if that will get us first time right
Yes.
in the way we think. So what I hear you say, you will want to get people who are culturally attuned to the thought of being diverse within in their mindset and heart set. Fantastic, fantastic. And you also said that you would want to replicate your consumer-based diversity within the organization. How fantastic is that? Thank you so much. With that, we come to the end of our first section and we move to a second segment, which is spilling the beans. And
The
I
coffee
have
beans. Yeah.
the coffee beans, absolutely. So, to that, I am going to ask you, what is that one thing where you believe we as organizations and as an industry leader this time, Tarun, right? Uh, we are contributing to certain talent challenges, if I may put it politely, but talent problems, if I may just say so. What is it that we are not doing right as India Incorporated when it comes to the way we look at talent? And what is it that we can do to get it right?
This sounds like a rapid fire, but I'll just say we talk inclusion and diversity and we practice discrimination and differentiation, right? I mean, I've worked in my previous company, I used to work for as a global energy major. Take the small example of campus hiring. I'm sure every company does it. The fact that we have a tiering system and we have almost a class system of, college X and college Y, and I'd only have, from here, from hire from so and so, immediately limits your access to talent structurally. And I think we have not done enough to overcome that. I think there are some amazing organizations out there who have chosen to do away with this kind of a system. I myself am working within my organization on changing that mindset, saying that if we don't get people from beyond these so-called
coveted,
creme la creme, we will have the same, because ultimately, where do they come from? Where do all our engineers go to? They go to MBA. From MBA, they land up in a company and they come up with fantastic, analysis. And then what we do kind of miss out. Pick one example, we miss social relational skills. Right? And in a marketing organization, do I only work on consumer and insights, or do I work also on empathy and design thinking, all the softer factors, consumer behavior? And that's one place where I would say, as an industry, and this is specifically India, because I also have a global organization. Thankfully, I think we've done away with that across many other parts of the world. I leave out, of course, the Oxbridge part of it, but I think that's probably where I would just say we have got to do better.
Amazing. And so, Tarun, what I heard was a socially diverse mindset. We would hire people. We would get in colleagues in our ecosystem who understand social diversity. The institutions that we go to, we would want that anyone who's hiring is able to relate to the consumer on ground. And that necessarily may not be somebody from a creme la creme institute.
Yes.
You need someone who has experienced the last mile, perhaps, and whoever does that the best is the go-to person for you. Fantastic.
And if I may just add, Devashish, for just one example, which is a live one, which I quote very often, is one of our large tea estates in South India, the Kanandevan Hills. Actually, today, even now, I think it's one of the first.
This was the Nilgiri teas, yes.
Yeah, it's one of the first which has practiced workers' participation in management. So the board comprises of 2 workers, right? Imagine me having to present, let's say, for example, the CEO's compensation in front of the NRC, and you've got your frontline, tea pluckers who are on the board. Now, how much more
can you divulge?
Right. So therefore, you have to kind of keep that factor in mind, saying, if I begin saying, oh, you're a plucker, you have no business, but we stood by this point about being inclusive and practicing that. Flip aside to the fact I said my consumer base, yes, it's men and women, but it's also, as you say, India and Bharat, right? So you've got rural India, urban India. How can I simply hire from Bombays and Delhis and Calcutta's? I have to be able to go to Faizabad and be able to get people from there to come in and join me. Equally, I have to get people from Tirunelveli to come in and join me, because that is where India gets represented.
Right.
If I start to segment out people, and by the way, we did that study and we realized ourselves that we were skewed in our talent intake to certain parts of the country because of our choice of institution that we were hiring from. Just want to share that one example.
Amazing, amazing. And with this kind of diversity that you manage within this nation, outside this nation, um, how do you create a very compelling employer value proposition for talent that is looking at Tata Consumer Products as their future dream employer?
So, firstly, I think anybody who comes to us, there are two things that clearly stand out. One is factual, and the other I'll just come to in a in a minute. The factual part is that they see the Tata name outside, right? And the first thing they expect is I can be myself, right? I can be in a company where you are able to live your values. It's very liberating for people, and I've seen this across meetings, and you can separate out those who are saying it for the sake of saying it and those who really mean it, right? So that to me is I truly welcome that. So first part of my EVP, thanks to my family name, is done. The second part is to live up to that name. And God forbid if there are colleagues, and I'm sure people who are watching this will say, I disagree with Tarun because I've noticed, so and so patches. Yes, we've had issues. We've had to go through tough choices, right? This company has grown because of the choices which we made over the last many, many years. That has also meant that we've had to be, fair and firm in our choices. And therefore, before I make a statement on EVP, what I always tell my team is first, test your truth before you tell your truth or your supposed truth. Because if you've not tested it, and like I said, it's so diverse, this organization, our contexts are different. We come from such rich heritage and history of Tata Tea and Tata Coffee and Tata Chemicals and Smart Foods, and then all the companies we acquired from from Tetley to Good Earth to 8 o'clock Coffee to Soulful to Nourish. I can go on. Everyone comes with in my days, in my company. So we have to live up to that truth and then test it and saying, does it hold true? And only then can I say this is our EVP. Because if people don't relate to that, then it's not our EVP. It's your or my individual EVP, which is thrust upon somebody else. So first one is factual, which is you're joining a Tata company. The second one is a sense of responsibility, saying, please, before you say this is my EVP, test that as it being true, and then tell it as it is.
Fantastic. Test your truth before you tell your truth. And I recall a conversation with one of your peers in a Tata company, and he tells me that, and he'd spent about 6 to 7 years in that role. He says, but what I need to take on every day is all my folks on the shop floor, and on their mobile phones they have Mr. Ratan Tata in screensaver, and so do their entire family, and that is how it is. So I think knowing your truth and then you tell your truth is absolutely the narrative that I've picked up for a great value proposition. Um, and that comes to a very core part of what TAG does as a business, is talent acquisition for organizations like Tata Consumer Products. Um, and at the core of what we do, of course, the hiring manager is very important. We are hiring for them, but candidate experience is at our core, where we want to give a fantastic candidate experience because we represent employer brand like Tata Consumer Products. What do you think, Tarun, from where you are? One critical thing that we in the industry need to work on to deliver an exceptional candidate experience.
So super point. And first of all, let me just say thank you for the partnership, Devashish. We've tried to reflect upon this in very many ways, and I've whichever way you cut and slice and dice it, it came down to the fact that every hiring manager and every leader was a candidate once. So I said the answer therefore was quite simple: look inward.
Look inwards. Yes.
Right? So I said, rather than trying to preach what should be, why don't you, want to do unto others what you would like to do unto yourself? Right? And I think that is where the answers stem from. And it could be as simple as micro behaviors of, courtesy and punctuality and discipline, all the way through how do you plan your organizational workforce planning? What is it that you are looking at in terms of skill sets? Are you looking at definitions which are broad and, let me say, inclusive, and therefore you're able to hire from a talent pool? Or are you defining talent so narrow that you only have this one rivulet or one stream to kind of look at talent from? Now, if you are going to choose, that's your choice as a hiring manager, like I said, then it is even more a requirement that we ensure that you leave those candidates with their experience, because that stream is only as much that the experience and every interaction you have with that person will result in a story, in a narrative. And that's a narrative that beyond that 1 hour of the interview, for the rest of their life, you can't control it. So you have that 1 hour, and of course maybe the half an hour before that, to really ensure that the narrative is shaped and built. And as you leave the person, whether it's a hire or it's not, that's fine, as long as the experience is there. I think the other part which I'll probably talk about, Devashish, is very often we have candidates who come in with a certain set of expectations, right? It's equally important for me as an organization to kind of also make sure that we are grounded in that. So,
because it's natural for them to come with those expectations.
Right? So if I take from our own point of view, we expect that we're a global company from the house of Tata, so you are already compared with TCS and JLR and Tata Motors and amazing companies.
Yes.
And then I say, but my reality is, as I just mentioned, we have 9, 10, 11 integrations going on, companies, it's a cauldron of cultures. And therefore, from a process perspective, the weft and the weave are coming together. So my request to candidates is very often is that, look, this is a company where I don't have the Ferrari in the parking lot waiting for it and I hand over the keys to you. We are more a company where the pottery is there, the clay is wet. If you want to leave your fingerprint on the future, that's your spot. Please come in and join us, right? So these are two aspects I would just leave with.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I had a question before I close this section. Tarun, this requires a lot of change management, will be too much into the face, but driving that subtle change in the way um, people think when they hire. How do people move away from that rivulet mindset that you spoke about? That one way of just thinking that this is the only way that the experience will happen. How do you bring change in uh, business leaders across to bring that kind of a change in thought process?
So it's
Your personal view.
yeah. So my personal view, there are probably many aspects to it, but I'll probably just jump to two.
Yeah.
One is again what I mentioned earlier, which is we're all a candidate once. It has also a shadow effect, which is you expect the candidates that what worked for me has to work out here for you as well. And that I think is an unfair shadow being cast. The second part I think is the kind of focus that we set. So for example, discipline, right? So our CEO Sunil's value for time is something everyone in my organization knows, right? So we could have a review meeting, but it starts on time, maybe 1 minute before time, and it ends on time, and if it goes over by 5 minutes, he's the first one to say, my apologies, but I need to close it now. That discipline sets into everything we do, right? Which means how we do planning, how we do execution, because ultimately we are also working towards shareholders. Every quarter we have to show our results.
Accountability, yes.
That behavior in a simple interview process again has to reflect. Now again, I'm going to be honest here and saying, look, I don't think we got it perfect yet. But I've already mentioned
that is
the
the
fact
thought.
exactly. So the moment your executive committee starts setting that behavior
Driving from the top.
and the fact that you're seeding in these thoughts that you yourself were there once, what would you do differently? That's what is changing. Now, of course, do I have amazing processes? Like I said, the Ferrari is not in the parking lot. So I wish I had, certified assessments. Everybody follows the same process. We all had the same assessments. We are still forming that.
We have the clay to be molded.
Which is the challenge for many of my HR teams and hiring managers, because they then help co-create what I believe today is the evolution of our process.
Amazing, fantastic. Thank you, Tarun. You've spilled quite a few beans there, and thank you so much for that. And with this, we move to the third segment, which is experts' advice, and this is almost a rapid fire round. And you could choose not to answer. You could choose to answer just the way you think, right? And with that,
So
I go
after
to
the spill the beans, now it's roast the beans. Right? So okay.
And we brew the beans too. So we go to our first question here, and this is for our national policymakers. Um, from an industry perspective, Tata Consumer Products is one of the biggest growing brands in the FMCG space in India, and from India. Uh, what are the three things you would want to ask from national policymakers that could make a big difference in the way, number one, we would want to do business, and in the way we would want to look at talent? Um, what are the three things perhaps you would want?
So again, there could be many things, and thank you for the question. The first one, which I have spent some time looking at data across the board, is that our quality of not education but faculty education across the US, and I think this is where, because of the way we have now begun to really thin slice education institutions, we've got fantastic brand names across the country, 15, 16, 18 campuses, but there are only as many faculty, right? So am I open to getting faculty internships into my organization? The answer is, of course, yes, because I would like them to bring that pragmatism into, whilst retaining the academic purity as well, right? So that's number one. Number two, when I look at the job market, I see this U shape, right? Which is the most qualified definitely get. I mean, look at my own R&D organization, my digital team. They're the most skilled, the most adept. Their half-life of knowledge, is 6 months, and they have to get again retrained, right? Flip to the other end, which is your mass level skills, where I have my frontline, my sales reps, my operators. I think those two ends are currently taken care of. The ones at risk, and to your earlier question on digitalization, is the middle.
Right.
And therefore, that is the rung where I think we've got to make sure that middle rung, who invest their hard-earned money, go to good colleges, put their parents' money into that, and then they land up in the jobs where, on the one hand, they are not fully satisfied because their skills are not being utilized. On the other hand, those jobs are the most susceptible to Gen AI, digitalization, etc. And therefore, how do you make sure that there is some form of resiliency built for them, right? So that to me is really number two. Number three is, to me, is systems thinking. I think everything that we do tends to be, let's fix one part and we'll fix the rest afterwards.
Later.
And as we all read Theory of Constraints, you just move the bottleneck from point A to point B. I think it's
आगे देखेंगे.
yeah, we'll see it later.
we'll
For
see
now,
later.
let's plug this hole and the next one. So and the one thing I realized is that we end up fixing, for example, I'll stop eating sweets, right, and I'll drink some lovely green tea, but we haven't spoken about the entire what is it that the average adult is therefore having. Therefore, what is the role that we, and this is just in foods, I'm talking about beverages, talk about your lifestyle. Do we have enough focus as a system that what is our education, our employment, our skilling ability doing for the larger ecosystem? Or are we just fixing one portion of it?
Fantastic. And so, number one, faculty. Can we create more high quality faculty who are able to get great talent going? Number two,
And along with strong industry
strong
interaction
industry
for faculty.
interaction. Absolutely. And number two, focus on the middle rung um, of society, which is investing so much to be able to build that career.
And who are the most impacted potentially by
potentially.
digitalization
Sure,
and AI.
sure. And number three, systems thinking. How do we make sure that we've planned well for the entire 9 yards rather than being very sporadic and plugging loopholes in a very short term basis?
Yeah.
So, fantastic. Thank you so much, Tarun. And with that, and you already hinted upon this. How do we bridge this gap between corporations and industry, and this on one side and academia on the other? I hear in all, we had a series of roundtables and many leaders who said that uh, the speed with which industry is growing and with the speed with which unfortunately curriculum gets translated into uh, real case studies that students need to be studying so that they come, when it's time for them to take up the jobs, they are ready to be first time right. There's such a big gap there. So how do we bridge this? How do academia and industry come onto the same page?
I think you've said it very well. We aren't on the same page. Sometimes we aren't even in the same book, right? And I think that's where probably it's important that one of us is reading a digital version on Kindle, the other one is reading a lovely leather-bound book. I think the interface, to my mind, is number one, the fact that where do you see skills truly outpacing the other? I don't want to generalize, but I do want to make sure that my peers also understand this message, that there are companies that have outpaced and the companies that also no longer exist. So I'm going to talk from the perspective of companies that have managed to stay in business. Again, systems thinking, because we always talk about companies, that have gone fast, but what about the ones that have burnt away? The impact they've had on society, the people that have been left behind in the wake, right? I think it's important for us to recognize that the companies that have kept pace, there is a certain element of solidness to the way in which they've gone about building their businesses, the way that they're focused on not just looking at organization and structures, but also looking at skills, because ultimately skills can only evolve as the context changes. And that context is where I think academia holds us true, because you are otherwise so task obsessed and so focused on your job that academia brings that purity and that ability to kind of show you the mirror. And that is where I see the real interaction. I cannot comment in general across the board, because I know that, for example, at the vocational skills level, we do have a fair difference in where jobs are and where the education system is.
Yes.
But I also noticed at the other end, when it comes to deep science, and again, I've worked in my previous jobs with very premier institutions in India and abroad, the element of external collaboration, the forming of coalitions, the idea that enterprises and companies are today part of a problem, whether it's carbon, sustainability,
Hmm.
water,
Hmm.
but you also want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And there again lies the whole, the intersection of academia and the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, the context in which you operate and the purity and the mirror that academia brings is what I see value in. But I would just leave it at that, because it really depends on where you want to kind of test that and where do you see that connect happening.
Thank you. Thank you. I think a lot more needs to be done. I think technology will play a very big role, especially in the speed and the way in which this bridge can be uh, bridged together. Um, my next question is three necessary things a graduate should learn before scouting jobs. And I'm going to that rung, maybe that
Yeah.
middle rung that we spoke about.
Yeah, so again, it depends upon what is the graduate looking at. Why I'm being apprehensive today is, and I have a daughter who's in that phase.
Yes, I have a
Let's
son.
go back to
Yeah.
this lovely book, the Fountainhead. Devashish, you and I probably would
Yeah.
recall that was
Yeah.
one of those elements. And I keep talking about this because I say probably when the earlier generation went to college, we looked at academia and professors as fountainheads of knowledge in some sense. Whereas today, given the pervasive nature of information all around us, students look at academia more as validation
Of information
of
they
information
already
they already
have.
obtained.
Yes.
So
Looking at real time anecdotes, looking at real life stories of validating what perhaps they read somewhere or they
absolutely,
experienced.
right. And this is my daughter, my son who's in school, is talking about robotics, and he's talking about mechatronics, and he's not even getting into first year of engineering, right? I mean, I learned mechatronics at that point of time. So I could go in and say, let me help you. And he's like, no, really, I've already got 5 different sources.
Right.
I've got 3 friends who've done so and so projects. They've already begun thinking systemically. They've begun building coalitions. They've begun to look. All they want is a validation saying, I'm on the right track. That's number one. Number two, I think even more, and that's why I come back to this piece of today, even though we're a 155, 156-year-old group, the Tata Group, the fact that we deliver value, but we live our values still resonates with people. The fact that you're seen as a responsible organization, I think I would really request, young graduates to say, have you done that test? Have you assessed for yourself? You're all, I'm sure, very well independent minded people. But this is one thing that you've got to go and test for yourself, right? The
Walk
third,
the talk.
exactly, are these companies, so have you make sure that you've done that piece? The, the third piece I would always, and this is fundamental to anybody who typically goes through, and I talk about the Indian system of education, not so much the one I've seen abroad. The Indian system of education, we are taught to or conditioned to not clarify, right?
Not question the
Not to
status
question,
quo.
right? What is given is what you have to reproduce. So I would always request graduates to form or use a more of an clarificatory mindset and not an assumptive mindset, right? Because those assumptions could very well lead you up to the first wrong door and the second wrong door, and then you don't know, 10 years later, you don't know where you are. Whereas that power of facing your fears, ask your question. I know you've not been conditioned through our own system, and I acknowledge that. But don't worry, face your fears, ask those clarificatory questions. That to me is what I think graduates.
Tarun, this part of the clip I'm going to specially forward to my son. And I'm going to tell him number one, am I on the right track? He needs to check that. Number two, deliver value, live our values. Is he doing that?
Yeah.
Number two. And number three, don't assume if there's a question, ask for clarity. Don't hesitate to do that because it's basis that you will be able to take that make that right choice.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then I come to the fourth question. One thing each that academia should start, stop, and continue in India.
Academia.
Academia.
It's going to run me into quite some trouble. So again, I have to be very broad in my answer because I've interacted with some
30,000 feet.
Some exemplary minds across institutes of science, fundamental sciences, engineering, B schools,
and you're very
social
passionate
sciences.
about STEM. I know that.
Absolutely, yes. And the fact that to me each of them plays a role, but the first thing I'll go back to is, again, even inadvertently, don't discriminate students.
Let's stop.
Because that is where I think the potential really kind of you're uncovering gems. I go back to my my earlier assignment where I was working with this amazing group of people who were working with students in class 8th and 9th. And by the time I was there, I think we've covered almost 100,000 children in what is called as NX thinking. Just something as simple as the food, water, and energy nexus. How does it work? Right? The fact that you operate a diesel-powered pump to get water into your fields, which then soak up so much of water, which goes into your food. How does it work? Something as simple as that. So that's, I think, the first one. Should I say
that you started with stop?
Stop, yeah.
What should they start afresh? And then what is it that they can continue? You can start with continue and you can go to start afresh.
So if I were to talk about continue, is I see a lot of open engagements today, and I really welcome that. I've seen this across institutions, and some of these tend to be, of course, individuals, but I truly welcome that. I truly welcome the open dialogue.
The outreach today that institutions make.
Absolutely.
To be able to, certainly, the open dialogue, and what should they start afresh? Any recommendation?
There's a lot.
What do you hear from the talent in your organization, in TC? Academia should stop, and you said don't discriminate students. Should continue the open engagement, which is a very welcome change, especially in the last decade, that academia institutions reach out to students. And we were about to broach on what should they start, and you said we don't want candles preaching to lighthouses.
Yeah. So that's why I said I would, in all honesty and modesty, say that I'm no one to tell academia what to start. So I'm going to refrain from answering that question.
Can I be a little bashful? And I feel some institutions are doing it very well. Is bringing in technology backbones and making sure that curriculum is consumed even over mobile. But there are many large segments of institutions not doing that. I think that playbook needs to be replicated. In all my humility, if I may just add on that, right, Tarun, I think it just the outreach is so much better.
Absolutely, I'm sure there are many such ideas. I myself come from a family of professors. My own mother, of course, used to be a professor, so I've seen her adopt technology and new practices very, very early. And that's why I say that because of the ability for one to really use, academia has that magical power of really being honest and pure. The possibility is really an ocean, right? So what you pick from there is really a choice of what you want to. And hence I said I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer.
Thank you so much, Tarun.